Have you ever noticed that just when everything starts going right in your business, something mysteriously goes wrong? Maybe you land that dream client and suddenly you come down with a terrible cold. Or you hit that revenue milestone, the one you've been working towards, only to find yourself picking fights with your spouse or lost in worry about a family member or an upcoming medical appointment. What if I told you it wasn't bad luck or coincidence, but actually a hidden pattern that you have the power to change? This pattern has a name. And once you understand it, you'll start seeing it everywhere, in your business, in your relationships, even in your health. Stay with me, because today we're diving into what Gay Hendricks calls the upper limit problem. And I'm going to show you exactly why understanding this could be the key to breaking through those revenue plateaus, you know, the ones you've been stuck at, to deepening your closest relationships and getting the joy back in your life, or the joy you've been looking for. Plus, for our Apple Podcast subscribers, I'll be sharing the deeper hidden barriers that keep this pattern in place and how to even work through those. Are you tired of growing your business alone? Let's work together to turn up the volume on your unique brilliance and transform how you connect with your ideal clients. Welcome to Authenticity Amplified. I'm Shawna Rodrigues, podcast strategist and founder of the Solopreneur Sisterhood, making sure you get the actionable insights you need on mindset, messaging, marketing, and all things business. Today's episode centers around a profound question from Gay Hendricks. Am I willing to increase the amount of time every single day that I feel good inside? As entrepreneurs, we often focus on external metrics, revenue goals, client numbers, social media engagement. What if the biggest thing holding us back isn't our strategy or our skills, but our own internal ceiling for success? That's what we're looking at today. I recently read The Big Leap, which, have you heard of this book? It's interesting because it is a book that I've had on my shelf for an eternity. And I finally decided, time to read this. I took it with me on a trip, and that's when I get most of my reading done, especially for physical books versus reading at night on my Kindle. And finally read The Big Leap. And it's interesting because I really thought the primary focus of the book would be the big leap. I've heard about it for years and really thought that leaping into the next stage of your work and the concept of the genius zone, because I'd heard that before from people I'd interviewed, from conversations I'd had with other entrepreneurs. I really thought that was the biggest thing that I was going to get out of reading The Big Leap. So when I peeled back the pages of this book, I started to learn about the upper limit problem. I was a little surprised, and it resonated so much with me. The upper limit problem is our internal thermostat setting for how much success, love, and positive feelings we'll allow ourselves to experience. When I was an undergrad, I studied homeostasis. I have a degree in social work, and it might have been a sociology class or might have been social work or both that I learned about this. So you might have heard that if you've studied psychology or sociology as well. So a homeostasis seemed like a much more static term, but it was very much like this state that we are naturally in and that we return to. So it tracks very easily to what I learned. But the best part about Dr. Hendricks, and when he explains it and we get into it, is that it's malleable. It's something that we can change. So looking at it as a thermostat that we can turn up and adjust is a very exciting way to see it. He explains that when we exceed the setting, which when I learned about homeostasis, it's what we all return to and where we put ourselves back to, which is why change is so hard, right? That when things are going better than our internal programming says we deserve, we unconsciously do something to sabotage ourselves, bringing us back to the level of success and happiness we subconsciously believe that we deserve. So it tracks very much to what I'd learned, but there's an exciting element to what he talks about, that we have the ability to change this. But it is like we have a success ceiling that we don't even know exists. Until we recognize it, we keep hitting our heads against it again and again. And what was helpful not only was his explanation of this, it tracked to something I'd already learned and understood when I was younger, but he gave us some very concrete things in his book to help you be able to see the ways it shows up. And I definitely recognize more than one. So I want us to go into these 5 different ways that the upper limit may show up for you and see if you recognize and can say like, oh yeah, I wonder if that wasn't really what I thought it was, and it was the upper limit showing up. So one of the ways that it may show up for you is as worry. And if you follow me on Instagram at Shawna Podcast, I have a really beautiful, I put it up with the background of, I was recently in Baja on a women's retreat, and I have a video of the ocean. I love the ocean, the sound of the ocean. And over it, though, I have this lovely song that this woman on Instagram wrote and sings about worrying doesn't change a thing. And we all know that cognitively, and yet we still worry, right? And Dr. Hendricks presents that perhaps worry is one of the ways that we manifest our upper limit, right? That we're taking this positive energy and instead it kind of convert it into anxiety. And so an example of this might be you just landed a big client and then you immediately go to all the ways you might disappoint them, all the ways things might just go wrong. And that is where your mind goes instead of celebrating the success, feeling the success, bathing the success, being excited about the ways that you're growing and letting you experience and feel that, because your internal thermostat is like, whoa, wait a minute. This is too much. This is going above this upper limit. Like, we're going to engage in worry instead of actually enjoying this and feeling this. And so a response for this is, I notice I'm creating worry. What's going well right now that might be stretching my comfort zone? And, we love curiosity around here. So maybe what if this worry is actually showing me where I'm growing? What is this underlying piece? And so that when we start worrying, instead of getting caught up in our worry, because it's so easy, right? It's so easy for us to get caught up in the worry, that instead of getting caught up in the worry, that we actually pause and see like, is there something else this might be about? Is there somewhere that I might be touching that upper limit? And that's what I'm experiencing. And then maybe if you're somebody who worries, then maybe that is a sign of the upper limit for you, right? And these are all in the book and the Big Leap. So I'm not the super brilliant person that came up with these. Gay Hendricks' work came up with this stuff, and I just loved them and wish I would have learned and seen them sooner because they definitely resonate for me, right? So the second one is criticism and blame, and how it can manifest as becoming highly critical of yourself or others when things go well. So if you just had a really successful launch, that you focus on minor mistakes or become hypercritical of your content or hypercritical of others, or notice yourself picking apart somebody that was helping you, even though you just had this great success, right? And this is one that resonated with me. And this is like a hard truth for me. It's one you don't want to admit, especially to whoever might be listening, right? If you listen to last week's podcast, you might be under the false impression that I have perfect relationships. I do not. Far from them, right? I can give you a list of people who would say otherwise, because nobody's perfect, right? If you speak to my past partners, one common thing that resonated and surprised me is they would say that I was critical. And this would surprise me because I don't think of myself as somebody who's critical. And yet, more than one of people I dated for a considerable amount of time would say that I was somebody who's critical. And that was surprising to me. My friends would not say that I was critical, but that was a common thing. And it made me realize that, wow, that is interesting. Maybe I come across as critical. Maybe it's the way I say things. And I worked on that. And if you listened to my podcast episode with my husband, that's not something my current partner would tell you. My husband would tell you for the last 6 years. He would not tell you that. So that's something that I've worked on, and that's something that has improved, because that's something that, or you could easily dismiss that as, maybe my previous partner just thought that and they were more sensitive or whatever else. And part of that could be me better understanding love languages, and the love language of my partner is words of affirmation, and could have been previous partners and I wasn't as good as recognizing them and being affirming, those could be the things. But when I read this book and I saw that one of the potential things you might do when you hit that upper limit is that you get critical. And I'm much better I'm not as self-critical as I used to be, but I used to be very self-critical. And I have people in my family, I will not name names. They probably don't even know who they are, but I know who they are, who are very self-critical, and blame is like a language in my family, that they're always blaming somebody and looking for blame and pointing fingers. And it makes me crazy. And it's as soon as you stop doing something, you can see it so much in others. It's like when somebody stops smoking and then they can smell smoke so much more than they used to, right? So, because I have people I know stop smoking and it makes them nauseous. Like they have a stronger reaction than I even do to cigarette smoke, right? So when you stop doing something, you see it even more. And I can see the blame game, especially my family and the criticism. And so that's probably an upper limit trigger that I was steeped in. I didn't even realize it. And so if you go back to past partners, they would probably tell you that I was very critical and I didn't even realize that I was critical. And so that might be something that I still need to be aware of and still pay attention to when things get hard and I'm hitting that upper limit, right? And so that was one for me that definitely resonated, being like, oh. So the response for that is, I notice I'm being unusually critical, which might be hard to notice. I don't know that in the past when that was said about me or when that came up, and I'm somebody who does try to leave space to learn things about myself. So that is something that was said to me that I was able to hear. And I had a hard time seeing it, even when I heard it. So I don't know that I'd be that good at noticing it. But it's something I'm going to listen to now. So maybe in another conversation, I'll be able to come back and say, yes, I heard that. I saw that. I do hear it and see it in others. So maybe I'll be better about hearing and seeing it myself when I have those moments. But if you do notice it, like maybe you can say, like, what am I having trouble accepting? What positive is overloading my system that I'm not able to accept? What is this possibly connected to, right? And the curiosity would be, what would happen if I allowed myself to celebrate this win? What if I didn't need to tamper it with this other flavoring, right? It's almost like there was these sour grapes at Costco. How random is this? These sour grapes, frozen sour grapes dipped in something sour that you put, like I was like making faces. I could barely eat it. And Roby loved it. He loved it. When we tried them, he would have loved for us to take them back. And I'm like, there's no room in our freezer and I can't eat these. Like I could not, they were too sour for me. I'd have to temper them with something else, right? So you had to have that perfect balance. And it's like our brains need the same thing. Like we can't have too much of the sour or too much of the sweet. So when we have something really good happen and our body's like, this is too much, we need to add in some more of the other flavoring. So I have something too sweet, I got to add in some of this sour, some of this salty. Like we got to balance this out. And so we get too much of that. And it's like, wait a minute, like, because we're trying to get the flavor balance. But it's like, it's okay for it to be a little sweeter. Maybe we've gotten ourselves too used to the salty or the sour, and it's okay to have a little bit of the sweet, right? It's not bad for us. It's good for us to have a little bit of the sweet. And so like adjusting our palate almost. Does that make sense? Is that a good example? You have to tell me. Yeah, if you're on Instagram or somewhere, just let me know and say, yes, I like that example of the grapes. That works for me. Because I'm curious if that actually resonates. Or if you're on YouTube, just comment below. Let me know what you think of that. So we've only gotten through 2. So that one's will be a little faster. A few lesser stories. So deflecting. What do you think that looks like? What does that bring to your mind? Right? That should be a fairly obvious one. So it's basically when you minimize positive attention. You minimize anything that you've done and minimize your achievements. You're recognizing this, aren't you? You're like, oh, yeah, maybe I do a bit of deflecting. Yeah. Like how fast do you change a subject when a client or a friend or your partner or somebody gives you praise? Like a client for transforming what they do, for you making a huge impact. And instead of going, yeah, that's amazing. It's so incredible that this has happened. Thank you so much for recognizing that. I appreciate that you see what I've done for you. And instead you're like, oh, it's not me. It's somebody else. It's not a big deal. It was you. Like, oh, it's no bit. Like what I do is not important. Or your partner tells you, your hair looks really great tonight. Oh, it's this new cut, I guess. Maybe, I don't know. It's a shampoo. I don't know. I actually don't like it. I don't think it looks good. Like how often do you quickly like push that off? So there's response is just to notice. I'm trying to move away from the recognition. Can I sit with this? Can I let this in? Can I receive this? Maybe get curious. What feels uncomfortable about receiving this? What about this acknowledgement is hard? Why is this hard? What can I just take this in? Can I just allow this to be, right? Instead of deflecting it and pushing it away. I think that's one that, especially as women, is a fairly common one. And we need to be able to have that joy, have that moment, feel that, experience that. Like, we want these good feelings. It's a good thing. We should be able to be, yes, I am. I have. Yes, I love my hair too. Yes, my eyes. I'm so fortunate. This is my eye color. And it makes me happy to look at my eyes and have this feature. Own it. Feel it. Experience it. Let yourself be in that moment. It's okay. It's good. It's good emotions. It's good to feel those emotions. And the more you let those emotions feel, the more capacity you have for them. Like, turn up that thermostat. Let that stuff in. It's a good thing. Okay. So 4 is squabbling. I love that that's what Gay Hendricks calls it, squabbling. I'd probably say arguing, fighting, but no, he calls it squabbling, which is kind of fun. So for squabbling. So what this can look like is if things are going well, and then you're having conflict. And this may be things are going well, and you go into the kitchen and you're frustrated with the way that your partner put away the knives. And you're frustrated with the way that there's stuff on the counter from somebody else doing this. And you pick a fight about it. And you get an argument about the household chores right after the closing cart on your most successful launch. And instead of letting yourself be in that emotion, you find this little squabbly fight to have with your partner that has nothing to do with it, so that you can shift over into that more comfortable space of being in an argument. So maybe the response is that you need to I'm noticing this increased tension. Maybe is there a positive thing that's happened, and this is me trying to even it out with this, like, this dish is a little too sweet. I'm trying to add some salty ickiness to it so it's not too sweet. And it's okay to let it be sweet. It's okay to have this goodness. And for your curiosity, like, if I take 100% responsibility for this conflict, what might I discover? If I could say, like, this is 100% because of the state that I'm in and what I'm compensating for, how quickly could I resolve this? Is this really that important? Does it really matter? Like, if I was to be giving the reframes, I reframe a lot. I try to reframe a lot. And my reframe, because I used to get driven crazy, and maybe you can identify with this, about the knives or the spoons not being put away that way that I would put them, right? That the small spoons go in this one, the big spoons go here, these certain forks go here. Da, da. And when they're not put away in this the right way, or when I cannot find a certain thing, it would make me crazy. But you know what that means? That means that someone else put away the dishes. I didn't have to put away the dishes. So now I get grateful, because for me, gratitude is the offset emotion for these other emotions, right? And gratitude is one of the good emotions I want to be in. So before I knew it was the upper limit problem, which is a new curiosity for me to introduce, right? I notice when I'm having these moments of wanting to get frustrated about silverware that's really not important. Instead, I would move into this gratitude space. And this gratitude space would be like, I am so fortunate that someone else put away the silverware and I didn't have to. So does it matter if I take a few seconds to shuffle the silverware? It's faster than me having to put away the whole dishwasher. And if it's like, I can find silverware, it's just one little slot over. What does it matter that it's like, in the scheme of the world, what does it matter that the silverware is not in the right spot? Is this for squabbling with the man that I love and adore and is so good to me that he put away the dishes? Like, no, I need to be grateful and I need to be in that moment. And now I'm going to start going, let me think about if something good happened, and this is my way of trying to like offset that goodness and add that little splash of flavor to even out for my palate, and to maybe be okay with me having more goodness in my world instead of having to change that. So this is a new way for me to look at that. But in the book, The Big Leap, Gay Hendricks definitely talks about taking 100% responsibility instead of trying to find the blame, because that goes back to the criticism, the blame we talked about earlier about how the other person needs to take responsibility for it, instead of being like, how could this be about where I'm at? And how can me getting upset about this be something I can resolve? And that could be trying to find the base of it. Or I often try to reframe things and find gratitude as my primary emotion instead of my frustration, that I don't need to be getting frustrated about it. So that's instead of squabbling. So that might be something to be, there's a great story that somebody I know tells about, like, they had the parent like hit themselves in the forehead with a cupboard and then yelled at the dog when they just like took this anger and put it over here. Like, that was blame. Something had to be to blame, and they yelled at the dog for something that was totally unrelated. So just the way we have to like figure out, why am I upset has nothing to do with this, and the way that those things can happen. So the fifth and final one that we are going to touch on, it feels a little harder for me, especially this week. I'm sure we'll discuss this at a later point. But the fifth one is getting sick or getting hurt. And how that looks is when you have physical symptoms appearing during growth periods or when positive things are happening and something comes up. And so this is a new reframe for me. So I'm still processing and like getting it into its place. I've definitely noticed like when I was in college that I would finish the semester and I would get sick. And I always thought it was like my body being like, oh, you finally have downtime. Like we can finally let you have downtime and be sick. Or like we actually need you to slow down now and we can let you slow down. So we're going to really slow you down. So I've always felt it was a way of my body communicating with me, but I never thought of it as like an upper limit problem, as Gay Hendricks explains. And he even claims that like he hasn't even had a cold because he's like gotten rid of this upper limit issue. And so that doesn't affect him. So it's a new concept for me to include getting sick and getting hurt. This week is a little bit challenging for me because I've actually got some big medical news this week, right? And so big enough that it's actually delayed this recording because I need to have space for that. So it's hard to hear that because part of me is like, well, is that saying that this is an upper limit? And so am I being pushed up against my upper limit with this? Like, it might be something we revisit at a later point because this is very much curiosity for me right now. So we'll give you the thought process from the book. And as I've had time to process this into my own life a little more, we might revisit this at some point in time, especially for the Solopreneur Sisterhood. For if you join that group, like feel free to question me about this, right? So let's say you develop a migraine the day before your first time being on a podcast, that can be an example of an upper limit problem. You're just going to get exposure, you're going to get out there and your body is like having this way of slowing you down. So the response is like, my body might be sending me signals. Is there an expansion that might be happening? Could this be related to the ways I'm up-leveling and where I'm going and what's happening? And so the curiosity is, what is my body trying to protect me from this next level? And so that's very much like the way of thinking and looking at this. So our curiosity is to be like, what am I doing with my current medical diagnosis to check in with this? And I'm very much like, I haven't spent as much time with the curiosity of like, what could this be related to? Because there are a lot of different ways that my business is growing and I am reaching new levels, new heights, and launching exciting new things. And I think that I'm still having to deal with the medical piece. I'm not able to just make it disappear. Like there's still things that need to happen with it. Because that's just what it is right now. And I'm very much still giving myself permission to enjoy the ways that my business is growing and things are up leveling and still getting to have those emotions even while I'm dealing with the medical piece. So, because the more you spend time with me, I'm sure you'll learn this, understand this, is that I don't think of things in absolutes. And it's really like if you've heard Roby talk about golf, which he talked about on the episode last week, about how he'll talk about how you show up, you play the game, whatever else, but sometimes you're going to hit the ball and it's going to hit a rock that you can't see in the middle of the fairway and just bounce off to the side and you have no control over that. And I think that as much as you can be responsible for like setting yourself up for success, the way you show up to play the game, who you are and what you bring to the table, how you view things, everything else, there's still going to be those rocks in the path that are going to send things bouncing off to the side. So I believe that my current medical thing isn't necessarily something that I've manifested in my body that I can control and stop, and it's all upper limit. I believe that I can keep myself on track as much as I can while that is still there. And so I'm not going to 100% believe that it's just an upper limit problem. And I'd be curious but I think there are things that happen and plenty of things that could be the body's way of signaling that it wants to put the brakes on because it has discomfort over where you're going. I think that our bodies are connected in that way. And there is a somatic response that we have to things. So it is necessary for us to keep that in mind, that could be happening. So that's how I'm currently seeing it and responding to it. And would definitely invite you to have your own response for those things. Let me know how you integrate it a little bit. So those are the 5 areas that are in the big leap. And I think it's fabulous to be able to think about our ability to stretch our limits, expand our ceiling for success and expansion, and to be able to look at that in a deeper way. And definitely, if you are somebody who is one of our subscribers and are going to be part of the Apple Podcasts subscription, that there are deeper roots that create these limits in the first place. And so in the Apple Podcasts, we have for subscribers only, I'm going to share about those pieces, that the 4 hidden barriers that actually create these upper limit problems, right? And so the beliefs that are kind of behind all of this. So we'll explore things like feeling fundamentally flawed, or potential fears of abandonment, or trying to separate ourselves from those we love or know best because we feel so separate as we achieve success and kind of up-level ourselves, and how that can rear itself up and challenge our limits and help us want to keep small and run up against the upper limit issue, right? So there's 4 of those in total, and we'll explore those hidden barriers. And there's probably something that you can connect with. I know there was more than one that I did, and that some of the clients I've worked with have found these like transformational, like looking at this. So I can't wait to share those. So if you're someone who supports this work and connect to this community as a subscriber, I'm very grateful for you. And if you're not a subscriber yet, this bonus content alone will be worth your subscription. It's like getting a behind the scenes look at what's really driving these patterns that we discussed today. So definitely get over, make sure if you're already on Apple Podcasts, this episode is right here with us. So you'll have easy access to it, and you should definitely check that out and gain from that perspective as well, to kind of build on what we've already talked about here, because I think it'll really help you with processing this at a deeper level. So as we kind of like wrap this up, I just want us to really focus on that recognition piece, that we just start noticing that when we have these things happen, that we're like, oh, wait a minute, is this argument, this squabble, was there a success today? And this is possibly me this is coming out of nowhere. Is this me just trying to like offset? Is this, me feeling this because I'm trying to salt the sweetness out and I'm trying to like even this out a little bit? Is this why I'm experiencing this right now? And it might be that it's helpful for you to journal. If you're somebody who journals, to kind of like note these patterns as you see them and be like, oh, that's what this is. I'm starting to feel this pattern with these things. And it really is that I have a pattern of deflecting. And when people say good things about me or to me, that I push those things back, and that's what's happening to me. And sometimes it, like with the recognition of like the physical sensations you're feeling, can, when good things happen, if you also notice that discomfort, to kind of connect those things. Or if you start to get self-critical in those things, you start to notice that. And so as we're recognizing, then do that pattern interruption, right? That when you notice those things happening, to ask yourself the questions like, what's going on right now? Is there something really good going on that might be related to this? And choosing to actually expand and feel that positivity rather than contract and go into that negative space, whether it's with the criticism and blame that you're starting to lock yourself into, or the argument you're having, or the worry you're getting caught up to, that you can instead choose to expand into the positive emotions that you're experiencing instead, and make that actual choice. And doing things like, one thing I do a lot with the clients that I work with is actually to write down the things that you're celebrating and really notice things that are going well, and have those notes about what successes are happening, what positive things are happening, so that they can start to notice them and sit with them and be comfortable with them and expand their comfort with having things going well and acknowledging that things are going well, because it's very important to do so. And that overall, we're just cultivating curiosity, right? Because we're just trying to understand these patterns, understanding what's happening, and not feeling like we're flawed in some way and there's something wrong with us. It's just like noticing these things are happening and connecting what they might be about, right? So that's our little way of trying to process this all and get us to a better place. So understand your upper limits aren't about self-judgment. It's just awareness and choice. So anytime you notice these patterns, you have an opportunity to choose differently. And your capacity for success and joy is not fixed, which I think is something that I thought earlier on. Like we get this thermostat setting, somebody set this program, the thermostat, which amusingly, that's what we have in our house. Like the ability to change the thermostat is probably in an app that was set by somebody who lived here previously. It's a rental. And so we don't know how to like set the thermostat. So we just have to like manually turn the buttons up and down, but we can't have it be like from like at 7 a.m. it goes up and at 10 p.m. it goes down like we've always had. We have to go manually turn it up and down. And so you don't moved it when you were a child, like whatever else. And you could say, no, I want to be this temperature. I want to have this much success, this much joy, and I can adjust this. And it just takes time to expand into that. And you need to have practice and patience to get there. So curiosity is our most valuable tool, and you will get there because you deserve to have that joy and that success and to expand into that. And seriously, The Big Leap is a fabulous book. I'm sure we'll discuss more points on it. I am going to reread it. And I've actually told other people to read it because I got so much out of it. And there's so much more they need to integrate as well. So I appreciate you having this opportunity for us to discuss it. I'll have this podcast episode to listen to. You'll have it to listen to as you like go, what was she saying? Oh, maybe squabbling is one of my things. I need to listen to that part of that episode again. So come back, mark this episode as something to revisit it. This is something you feel like you need to work through a little bit more and figure out because we're all in this together as we grow together and get things figured out because you are capable of so much more than you think and your success can be inevitable. And I'm here for it. Thanks for being here and making time for this. If you found this video helpful, don't forget, check out these other videos and subscribe. You want to be around to keep growing your business authentically.